Without discipline, your strength is wasted. Without mastery, your motion is chaos. The warrior's path begins not with battle, but with control of the mind, of the body, of every decision. In this message, I will show you how to build a level of discipline so complete it becomes instinct. Musashi didn't fear the enemy, he feared distraction, and so must you, because without focus, there is no victory. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind, and tell us where are you watching from? The disciplined man is not preparing for battle. He is already in it. Many seek discipline as if it were a weapon to be picked up when needed and set aside when the fight is done. This is the first and greatest mistake. Discipline is not a tool. It is not a strategy. It is not a temporary state of being. It is the path itself, and you are either walking it or you are lost. I have watched countless warriors fall not because they lacked skill, but because they treated discipline as something external to themselves. They speak of getting disciplined as if it were a coat to be worn or discarded. They fail to understand. Discipline is not something you do, it is something you become. In my years of study, in my countless duels, in the silence of my meditation, and the fury of combat, I learned this truth. The battle is not ahead of you. The battle is now. It is in this moment as you listen to these words. It is in the thoughts you entertain, the choices you make, the actions you take or fail to take. When a swordsman thinks he can wait until the duel to summon his discipline, he has already lost. His sword may be sharp, but his mind is dull. His technique may be perfect, but his spirit is weak. He has failed to understand that every moment of life is combat, against weakness, against distraction, against the thousand small surrenders that accumulate into defeat. True discipline has no off switch. It does not rest. It does not wait for important moments. It recognizes that every moment is important. Every breath is a battle. Every choice is a skirmish. Every day is a war. This is why so many fail in their pursuit of mastery. They seek discipline as a means to an end, not understanding that it is both the means and the end. They want the results without becoming the person who naturally creates those results. They want the power without becoming powerful. They want the victory without becoming victorious. Let me be clear. Discipline is not punishment. It is not deprivation. It is not the harsh master many imagine it to be. True discipline is freedom. It is the freedom from doubt when others hesitate, the freedom from fear when others flee, the freedom from confusion when chaos reigns. But this freedom comes at a price. You must give up the illusion of casual mastery. You must abandon the myth that you can be disciplined only when it matters. Everything matters. The way you sit as you listen to these words matters. The thoughts you allow to linger in your mind matter. The promises you make to yourself and keep or break matter. I did not become undefeated by practicing discipline. I became undefeated by becoming discipline itself. Every movement, every thought, every decision aligned with a single purpose. Not because I forced them to, but because that alignment became my natural state. This is the first teaching, and it is also the last. Discipline is not the path to mastery. Discipline is mastery. It is not the way to become strong. It is strength itself. When you truly understand this, your journey has begun. Until you understand this, you are merely playing at warfare, playing at mastery, playing at life. The path of discipline lies before you, not as a tool to be used, but as a way to be walked, not as a temporary state to be endured, but as a permanent transformation to be embraced. The question is not whether you will be disciplined today. The question is, will you become disciplined? Itself, choose now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when the time is right, now. Because the battle is not coming, it is already here. And you are either the warrior or you are the battlefield. Victory in battle begins with how you rise from bed. This truth eludes many who seek the path of the warrior. They dream of great victories, of decisive moments, of legendary achievements, but they fail to understand. These moments are merely the visible peak of a mountain whose true mass lies beneath the surface, built from thousands of small, seemingly insignificant decisions. I have watched countless warriors train their sword arm while neglecting their morning routine. They perfect their stance but cannot master their sleep schedule. They study strategy but cannot organize their daily tasks. They seek to command armies but cannot command their own appetites. Let me share with you a truth learned through blood. Mastery is built in moments so small most would consider them beneath notice. The way you place your feet when you first stand in the morning, the precision with which you fold your blanket, the attention you give to your first meal. These are not minor details. They are the foundation upon which all greater achievements are built. When I took up the sword, I did not begin by studying the great techniques. I began by studying how to grip the handle properly. Hours spent on this single, simple action. Days, weeks. Because I understood what most fail to grasp, mastery of the small leads to victory in the great. Your morning routine is not separate from your training. It is your training. Every small decision is a battle. Every tiny habit is a skirmish. The way you arrange your living space, the order in which you perform your daily tasks, the precision with which you maintain your tools, these are not preparations for the warrior's path. They are the path itself. Consider the blade of a sword. Its edge is not maintained through occasional great efforts, but through constant, meticulous care. A single moment of neglect can create a nick that leads to a crack that leads to catastrophic failure. Your discipline is no different. It is not forged in dramatic moments, but in constant, consistent attention to detail. I have seen warriors who could perform the most complex techniques fail in basic combat because they had not mastered their breathing. I have watched skilled strategists lose battles because they had not mastered their sleep. These are not coincidences. They are the natural consequences of neglecting the small in favor of the great. The truly disciplined warrior understands there is no such thing as a small detail. Everything is connected. The way you make your bed affects the way you hold your sword. The way you arrange your room affects the way you arrange your thoughts. The way you begin your day affects the way you end your battles. This is why I teach. Master the small and the great will follow. Create routines that demand precision. Establish habits that require attention. Build patterns that enforce excellence. Not because these things are important in themselves, though they are, but because they build the foundation of all greater achievements. When you wake, wake with purpose. When you dress, dress with attention. When you eat, eat with awareness. When you move, move with intention. These are not mere activities. They are opportunities for mastery. They are the daily battles that determine who you become. The warrior who cannot master his morning cannot master his sword. The warrior who cannot control his appetite cannot control his fear. The warrior who cannot order his space cannot order his thoughts. These are not philosophical statements. They are practical truths learned through decades of observation and experience. Begin here. Begin with the small. Begin with the details that others ignore. Master your morning routine. Perfect your basic movements. Control your immediate environment. These are not stepping stones to greater things. They are the greater things, hidden in plain sight. Remember, the difference between the master and the amateur is not in their handling of the extraordinary, but in their approach to the ordinary. The master brings the same quality of attention to folding his clothes as he does to drawing his sword. The amateur saves his best efforts for what he considers important, never understanding that everything is important. Your path to mastery begins not with grand gestures, but with small improvements. Not with dramatic changes, but with consistent refinements. Not with major battles, but with minor victories. Master these, and the greater victories will come not as conquests, but as natural consequences. This is the way of the warrior, to find greatness in the small, to build strength through detail, to achieve victory through mastery of the mundane. Begin now. Begin here. Begin with the next small action before you, for in this moment, in this simple choice, lies the seed of all future. Victories. Every distraction dulls the blade. In my years of studying the sword, I discovered a truth that extends far beyond the realm of combat. The warrior's greatest enemy is not opposing steel, but the chaos of his own mind. A sword can be sharp, a technique perfect, but if the mind is cluttered, defeat is certain. I lived alone in a cave, spending years in isolation, not because I feared people, but because I understood the power of silence. In that silence, I found clarity. In that clarity, I found strength. In that strength, I found victory. This is the path I will now share with you. Most who seek power surround themselves with noise. They fill their minds with endless information, their ears with constant sound, their eyes with ceaseless movement. They mistake this noise for knowledge, this movement for progress. They do not understand that power lies in the ability to cut through this chaos, to find the single essential truth hidden beneath layers of distraction. Think of your mind as a sword. Every unnecessary thought is a nick in the blade. Every distraction is a spot of rust. Every moment spent in mindless activity is a dulling of the edge. You cannot afford this weakness. The warrior's mind must be as sharp as his blade, as focused as his strike, as clean as his cut. I see warriors today carrying devices that demand their attention, surrounding themselves with endless sources of distraction, fragmenting their focus into 1,000 pieces. They wonder why they cannot achieve mastery while allowing their mind to be mastered by trivial concerns. Let me be clear. Every moment spent in distraction is a moment of training lost. Every hour given to mindless entertainment is an hour stolen from mastery. Every day spent reacting to the noise of the world is a day taken from the path of the warrior. This is not about denying pleasure or embracing suffering. It is about understanding value. What value does this distraction bring? What power does this entertainment give? What strength does this noise add? If the answer is none, then it must be cut away as mercilessly as you would cut away dead flesh. From a wound. In battle, a moment's distraction means death. In life, constant distraction means a living death, a state of perpetual weakness, of never achieved potential, of power squandered on trivialities. You must decide, will you be the warrior who masters his attention, or the victim who surrenders it to every passing distraction? The path I advocate is simple, but not easy. Cut the noise, all of it. The unnecessary conversations, the mindless entertainment, the endless scroll of information that adds nothing to your power. Cut it as you would cut away anything that weakens your blade. Create spaces of silence in your life, not as a punishment but as a source of power. In silence you can hear the subtle voices of insight. In solitude you can feel the growth of strength. In simplicity you can find the clarity that leads to victory. Your mind must become like a still pond, reflecting reality without distortion. Every distraction is a stone thrown into that pond, creating ripples that distort your perception, weaken your judgment, delay your reaction. The warrior cannot afford these ripples. The cost is too high. This is why I lived simply, one sword, one purpose, one focus. Not because I could not handle complexity, but because I understood that complexity is often the refuge of the weak. Strong tea needs no sugar. Sharp steel needs no decoration. Clear minds need no entertainment. Begin this practice now. Look at your life. What can be cut away? What noise can be silenced? What distractions can be eliminated? Be ruthless in this. Assessment. The warrior cannot afford sentimentality when it comes to identifying weakness. Start with small silences. 10 minutes without your devices. 1 hour without entertainment. 1 day focused solely on what matters. These are not deprivations. They are opportunities. Opportunities to sharpen your mind, to clear your vision, to strengthen your purpose. Remember, every great warrior throughout history achieved their greatness in conditions far simpler than what you have now. They did not need endless entertainment. They did not require constant connection. They did not depend on perpetual distraction. Neither do you. The choice is yours. Will you continue to let your power be drained away by 1,000 small distractions? Or will you cut through the noise, find the silence, and in that silence, forge the strength that leads to victory? The blade cannot be sharp if the mind is dull. Choose now, which you will sharpen. The warrior's real training begins when no one is watching. This truth I learned not in the heat of battle, but in the cold solitude of dawn, when my only companion was my shadow, and my only audience was the rising sun. It was in these moments, far from the eyes of others, that I forged the strength that would later seem effortless to observers. Many who seek the path of mastery make a crucial mistake. They train for the eyes of others. They seek validation, acknowledgement, praise. They mistake the reflection of their efforts in others' eyes for true progress. This is a fatal error, one that corrupts the very foundation of discipline. Let me share with you what I learned in those solitary hours. True power is built in isolation, not because isolation itself is magical, but because only in isolation. Can you confront yourself honestly? Only when no one is watching can you strip away the pretense, the performance, the subtle lies we tell ourselves when others are present. I spent years practicing the same basic movements thousands of times, not to impress anyone, but to embed them so deeply in my being that they became more natural than breathing. This was not training for combat. It was training for truth. The truth of who you are when no one is watching, when no one is keeping score, when no one will ever know whether you completed your practice or surrendered to weakness. The warrior, who trains only in the company of others, is building a house of cards. It may look impressive, but it cannot withstand the winds of real challenge. True strength is built in those moments when continuing would bring no praise, and quitting would bring no shame. When the only reason to continue is your own unshakable commitment to mastery. This is why I teach. The most important battles are fought in solitude. The most crucial victories are won when no one is there to witness them. The most valuable training happens in those moments when you alone know whether you held to your standards or let them slip. Consider this. Every great warrior throughout history spent countless hours in solitary practice, not because they couldn't find training partners, but because they understood that the deepest work must be done alone. The refinement of technique, the cultivation of spirit, the forging of will, these are inherently solitary pursuits. When you train alone, you confront your true self. There's no one to impress, no one to compete with, no one to provide energy or motivation. You must generate these things from within. This is not a punishment. It is an opportunity. An opportunity to discover what truly drives you, what truly matters to you, what you truly stand for when all external supports are removed. Leadership emerges naturally from this solitary strength. The warrior who has mastered himself in isolation does not need to demand respect. It comes naturally. Those who have never seen him train recognize the power he carries. Those who have never witnessed his private disciplines sense the authority in his presence. This is because true leadership is not a performance. It is a manifestation of who you have become in those countless hours when no one was watching. The strength you build in solitude becomes the foundation upon which others naturally rely. The discipline you forge in private becomes the standard that others naturally follow. But this path demands complete honesty. In solitude, you cannot lie to yourself. You cannot pretend. You cannot hide behind excuses or rationalization. The standard you set is the standard you must meet, with no witnesses except your own conscience. Begin this practice now. Create times of solitary training, not just physical training, but mental and spiritual as well. Establish practices that no one will ever see, standards that no one will ever know about. except you. These are not additions to your training. They are the core of it. Set challenges for yourself that you tell no one about. Create disciplines that you never discuss. Build strength that you never display, except when necessary. This is not about being secretive. It is about building power that is real, not performative. Remember, the strongest warriors are often the quietest. Not because they are hiding their strength, but because their strength is so deeply rooted in solitary practice that it needs no announcement. It simply is. Your path to mastery must include these solitary hours, these private victories, these unseen battles, for it is here, in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, that you truly become the warrior you are meant to be. Train alone. Lead many. This is the way of the true warrior. One pain is sharp, the other is endless. In all my years of studying the sword of facing death and dealing with it, I have come to understand a truth that most spend their lives avoiding. All paths lead to pain. This is not philosophy. It is practical reality. You will suffer. The only choice you have is which suffering you will embrace. Let me speak plainly. There are two pains in life, the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The first is like the cut of a sharp blade, clean, precise, healing. The second is like a festering wound, persistent, poisonous, eternal. Most choose the pain of regret by default. They do this not because they are weak, but because they are deceived. They see only the immediate discomfort of discipline, while remaining blind to the far greater suffering that awaits those who avoid it. I have watched warriors choose comfort over training, rest over preparation, pleasure over growth. They do this believing they are avoiding pain. What they do not understand is that they are merely trading a small, productive pain for a large, destructive one. The pain of discipline has a purpose. It strengthens, it teaches, it builds. Like the controlled cut of a surgeon's knife, it may hurt, but it heals. It creates something better than what was there before. The pain of regret serves no purpose. It weakens, it haunts, it destroys. Think of the warrior who rises before dawn to train. His muscles ache, his mind rebels, his body craves more sleep. This is the pain of discipline. Now think of the warrior who sleeps in, who arrives unprepared, who faces his opponent with the knowledge that he has betrayed his own potential. This is the pain of regret. The first pain ends. The second pain endures. The first pain makes you stronger. The second pain hollows you out. The first pain is a teacher. The second pain is a torturer. Yet most choose the second pain, not through conscious choice, but through the unconscious avoidance of the first. I have lived both pains. I have felt the bite of discipline's blade and the slow poison of regret's wound. Let me tell you with the authority of experience, embrace the first pain, run toward it, welcome it. For in doing so, you escape the second pain entirely. The pain of discipline comes in many forms. The ache of muscles pushed beyond comfort, the hunger of appetites denied, the loneliness of choices that separate you from the common crowd, the mental strain of focusing when others relax, the emotional labor of controlling your reactions when others indulge them. But each of these pains serves a purpose. Each builds something. Each creates strength where there was weakness, skill where there was clumsiness, power where there was frailty. The pain of discipline is the pain of growth, of transformation, of becoming. The pain of regret, by contrast, builds nothing. It is the pain of potential wasted, of opportunities missed, of battles lost before they began. It is the pain of knowing you could have been more, done more, become more, if only you had chosen the other pain when you had the chance. This is why I teach, choose your pain. Choose it consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of what you are doing. Do not let pain choose you. Do not let it come to you by default, by avoidance, by the path of least resistance. The practice is simple but demanding. Whenever you face a choice between discipline and comfort, choose discipline. When you must choose between the hard right and the easy wrong, choose the hard right. When you must decide between temporary pain and permanent regret, choose the temporary pain. Start small if you must, but start now. Choose the pain of early rising over the pain of wasted hours. Choose the pain of controlled eating over the pain of physical weakness. Choose the pain of focused work over the pain of mediocre results. Choose the pain of honest self-reflection over the pain of continued self-deception. Remember, the pain of discipline weighs ounces, but the pain of regret weighs tons. The pain of discipline lasts for moments, but the pain of regret lasts for years. The pain of discipline is the price of growth, but the pain of regret is the cost of remaining small. Your path as a warrior will not be painless. Nothing of value is, but you can choose which pain will shape your path. You can decide which pain will define your journey. You can select which pain will create your legacy. Choose now. Choose consciously. Choose the sharp, clean pain of discipline over the endless, poisonous pain of regret. For in this choice lies the difference between the warrior you could become and the warrior you will regret not becoming. When motivation fails, ritual remains. In my years of study, I discovered a truth that escapes many who seek the path of the warrior. Motivation is as changeable as the wind, but ritual is as steady as the mountain. Those who depend on motivation to drive their actions will find themselves adrift when that motivation inevitably fades. But those who build their lives on ritual become unstoppable. I did not become undefeated by waiting for inspiration. I did not master the sword by training only when I felt energized. I built rituals, unchanging patterns of action that proceeded regardless of my emotional state, regardless of my physical comfort, regardless of any external circumstances. Let me share with you the power of ritual. Every morning, before the sun rose, I would perform the same sequence of movements, the same pattern of breathing, the same preparation of my mind and body. I did this not because each morning brought fresh enthusiasm, but because the ritual demanded it. The ritual became stronger than my momentary desires, more powerful than my temporary discomforts. This is what most fail to understand about discipline. It is not maintained through continuous acts of will. The will is a finite resource, easily depleted by resistance, doubt, and fatigue. True discipline is maintained through ritual, through patterns of behavior so deeply ingrained that they require no decision, no motivation, no act of will to execute. Think of the tea ceremony. Every movement is prescribed, every action predetermined. There is no room for doubt, no space for hesitation. The practitioner does not wake each morning and decide whether to perform the ceremony correctly. The ritual itself makes that decision. This is the power you must harness in your own practice. Your morning routine should not be a series of decisions. It should be a ritual. Your training should not depend on how you feel. It should be a ritual. Your preparations for battle, whether that battle is physical, mental, or spiritual, should not be subject to mood or circumstance. They should be ritual. I have watched warriors fail not because they lacked skill, but because they lacked ritual. They trained hard when they felt strong, rested when they felt weak, focused when they felt sharp, wandered when they felt dull. They mistook this inconsistency for flexibility. What they did not understand was that they were building a foundation on shifting sand. Ritual is not mindless repetition. It is mindful reinforcement of what matters most. When you create a ritual, you are not just organizing your time. You are declaring your values. You are not just establishing a routine. You are building a fortress against weakness. The power of ritual lies in its certainty. When you face a difficult morning, you do not have to decide whether to train. The ritual has already decided. When you face a challenging situation, you do not have to invent a response. The ritual provides the pattern. When your motivation falters, you do not have to search for will. The ritual carries you forward. This is why I teach. Build your rituals now while you have the strength. Design them carefully, for they will shape your life. Make them simple, enough to be sustainable, but demanding enough to force growth. Then commit to them with the understanding that they are not optional, they are essential. Start with the fundamentals. Your waking time should be a ritual. Your morning preparation should be a ritual. Your training should be a ritual. Your mental preparation should be a ritual. These are not restrictions on your freedom. They are the foundation of it. The warrior who depends on motivation will be strong sometimes. The warrior who builds on ritual will be strong always. The warrior who waits for inspiration will act occasionally. The warrior who follows ritual will act invariably. The warrior who relies on will may achieve much. The warrior who embeds ritual will achieve everything within their capacity. Your rituals must be personal. They must reflect your goals, your values, your path, but they must be absolute. A ritual that can be broken is not a ritual. It is merely a suggestion. A ritual that bends to circumstance is not a ritual. It is merely a preference. Build your rituals with care. Consider what actions, if done consistently, would lead to mastery. What practices, if maintained absolutely, would build unshakable strength. What patterns, if followed invariably, would forge unstoppable discipline. These are the foundations of your rituals. Remember, motivation is a spark that flares and fades. Ritual is a steady flame that burns through all conditions. Motivation is a temporary ally. Ritual is a lifelong weapon. Motivation is what you feel. Ritual is what you are. Your path to mastery lies not in finding endless sources of motivation, but in building rituals that continue when motivation fails. Not in making daily decisions about your practice, but in removing all decision from your essential actions. Not in waiting for the perfect moment to act, but in creating patterns that make action inevitable. This is the way of the warrior, to rise above the need for motivation by embedding excellence in ritual, to transcend the limitations of will by making right action automatic, to achieve consistency not through constant effort, but through unwavering pattern. Build your rituals, trust your rituals, become your rituals, for in them lies the power to transform intention into action, potential into reality, and weakness into unshakable strength. The body follows where the will commands. This truth I learned not in moments of strength, but in moments of absolute exhaustion, when every muscle screamed for rest, when every fiber of my being demanded surrender. It was in these moments that I discovered the body's limits are set not by physical boundaries, but by the borders of our will. Many warriors make the mistake of focusing solely on physical training, believing that strength lies in the development of muscle, in the refinement of technique, in the conditioning of the body. They fail to understand that the body is merely the servant. The will is the master. I have seen physically powerful warriors crumble in the face of challenge, while physically weaker ones persevered. I have watched technically perfect practitioners fail, while those with rougher skills succeeded. The difference was not in their bodies, but in their will. Let me share what decades of combat have taught me. Your body will quit 1,000 times before your will exhausts its potential. Your muscles will plead for rest long before your spirit needs it. Your physical form will claim impossibility, while your will knows otherwise. This is not about ignoring the body's needs or foolishly pushing beyond safe limits. It is about understanding the true hierarchy of power. The will does not serve the body serves the will. The will does not bow to fatigue bows to will. The will does not yield to discomfort yields to will. Think of the times you have said, "I can't." Think deeply about these moments. Was it truly that you could not, or was it that you would not? Did your body truly reach its limit, or did your will simply accept the body's first protest as final? I have trained thousands of warriors, and I tell you this with certainty. Most never come close to their true physical limits. They stop at the first serious resistance. retreat at the first significant discomfort, yield at the first genuine challenge. They mistake the body's reluctance for the body's limitation. The will must be trained more rigorously than the body. While the body trains through repetition, the will trains through rejection. Rejection of excuses, rejection of limitations, rejection of the very concept of impossibility. This training begins with small challenges. When your body says one more repetition is impossible, you command it to do 2 more. When your legs say, we cannot run another step, you command them to run another mile. When your mind says, this is enough, you reply, I will decide what is enough. But understand, this is not about mindless pushing. It is about mindful commanding. The strong will is not deaf to the body. It simply refuses to be ruled by it. It listens, acknowledges, and then commands. It does not ignore wisdom, but it does ignore weakness. I have discovered this. The body has no fixed limits. What it can achieve expands or contracts based on what the will demands of it. This is not mysticism. It is observable reality. The same body that claims it cannot continue will find new strength when circumstances demand it. The same muscles that protest impossibility will find new capacity when the will refuses to yield. This is why I teach. Strengthen your will first, and the body will follow. Build an unshakable determination, and physical limitations will constantly retreat before it. Forge an indomitable spirit, and you will be amazed at what your body can achieve. The practice is simple but demanding. Each day, give your body one command it wants to refuse. Each day, demand one more repetition than comfort allows. Each day, extend one limit that habit has established, not recklessly but relentlessly. Your will must become like the ocean, deep, powerful, inexhaustible. The body's protests should be like waves on its surface, noticeable but insignificant in comparison to its depths. Its commands should be like the tide, inevitable, irresistible, unstoppable. Remember, the strongest muscle in a warrior's arsenal is his will. The most powerful weapon in his armory is his determination. The most important strength he possesses is his refusal to accept limitation. This truth applies beyond physical training. In strategy, in combat, in life itself, the will remains the commander. The body may be tired, but the will decides whether to continue. The mind may be stressed, but the will decides whether to focus. The spirit may be challenged, but the will decides whether to persist. Begin this practice now. Start with small commands, minor extensions of comfort zones, slight expansions of supposed limits. Build gradually but persistently. Let each small victory of will over body become the foundation for larger victories. Your path as a warrior depends not on what your body can do, but on what your will can command it to do. Not on what seems possible, but on what you decide must be done. Not on what feels comfortable, but on what you determine is necessary. This is the way of the warrior, to forge a will so powerful that the body has no choice but to follow, to build. A determination so absolute that physical limitations become mere suggestions, to develop a spirit so strong that the impossible becomes merely the not yet accomplished. In combat, you fall to your preparation. This truth I learned not through victory, but through watching countless warriors face their moment of truth, that instant when theory meets reality, when practice meets purpose, when training meets test. In that moment, there is no time for new learning, no space for adjustment, no opportunity for improvement. You are simply what you have trained to be. Let me speak with the authority of blood-bought experience. You do not rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of preparation. The warrior who thinks he can summon strength he has never built, skill he has never developed, or courage he has never cultivated is not a warrior at all. He is a dreamer walking toward defeat. I have watched warriors train with casual indifference, practicing techniques with halfway effort, approaching their preparation with the assumption that they will somehow perform better when it matters. They do not understand a fundamental truth. Combat does not create excellence. It reveals it. Think deeply about how you train. Every imperfect repetition, every sloppy movement, every moment of divided attention becomes part of who you are. You are not training the technique, you are training yourself. And what you train, you become. This is why I demanded perfection in practice. Not because perfection is achievable, but because the pursuit of it creates excellence. Every cut must be precise. Every stance must be solid. Every movement must be purposeful. Because in combat, you will not exceed your training. You will express it. Many warriors train until they get it right. This is insufficient. You must train until you cannot get it wrong, until the right way is the only way, until excellence is not a choice but a habit, until proper form is not a conscious decision but an instinctive response. Consider this: under pressure, under stress, under threat, you will not rise to your expectations. You will fall to your standards, and your standards are not what you hope for, not what you wish for, not what you dream of. Your standards are what you do consistently in training. The warrior who trains with intensity but without precision builds intense imprecision. The warrior who practices with speed but without control develops swift chaos. The warrior who exercises power but without purpose creates purposeless force. Your training does not mask your flaws. It magnifies them. This is why I teach. Train as you intend to fight. If you want to be precise in combat, be precise in practice. If you want to be powerful in battle, be powerful in training. If you want to be controlled under pressure, be controlled in preparation. The practice is demanding, but simple. Every training session is combat. Every repetition is life or death. Every movement matters. There is no such thing as just practice. There is no such thing as going through the motions. There is only excellence or its absence. Your body does not know the difference between practice and combat. It only knows what you have trained it to do. Your mind does not distinguish between preparation and performance. It only executes what you have programmed it to execute. Your spirit does not separate training from testing. It only expresses what you have built it to express. Begin this practice now. Eliminate the concept of good enough from your training. Remove the idea of almost right from your practice. Banish the notion of close enough from your preparation. These are not standards. They are surrender agreements with mediocrity. When you train, train with this understanding. Every moment of practice is creating your future performance. Every repetition is building your future response. Every session is shaping your future self. Train not for the practice itself, but for the combat it prepares you for. Your techniques must become so deeply embedded that they require no thought to execute. Your responses must become so thoroughly programmed that they emerge without conscious decision. Your excellence must become so completely ingrained that it cannot be shaken by pressure. Remember, the warrior who trains at half speed will move at quarter speed under pressure. The warrior who accepts small errors in practice will commit large errors in combat. The warrior who trains with divided attention will fight with fractured focus. This is not about perfection. It is about intention. Every movement in training must have purpose. Every repetition must have focus. Every session must have meaning. Because in combat, you will not have time to add what was missing in training. You will only have time to express what is already there. Your path as a warrior is built in training. Not in combat, not in competition. Not in the moment of truth, but in the thousands of moments that precede it. In the quiet hours of practice, in the solitary moments of preparation, in the endless repetitions that seem meaningless until they mean everything. This is the way of the warrior, to train with such dedication that combat becomes merely an expression of practice, to prepare with such thoroughness that performance becomes simply a demonstration of preparation, to practice with such excellence that victory becomes merely the natural consequence of training. A scattered mind cannot win a focused fight. In all my battles, in all my studies, in all my years of mastering the sword, I have found this truth to be absolute. Where your mind wanders, your power scatters. The warrior who cannot command his attention commands nothing else. Let me share what the battlefield has taught me. Presence is not a philosophical concept, it is a martial necessity. When your mind drifts to the future, you miss the attack in the present. When your thoughts linger in the past, you fail to see the opportunity before you. When your attention splits, your power divides. I have watched skilled warriors fall to lesser opponents, not because they lacked technique, but because they lacked presence. Their bodies were in the fight, but their minds were elsewhere, in their past victories, in their future goals, in their doubts, in their hopes, in the 1,000 places a wandering mind can go. This is why I teach. Be where your feet are, not where your thoughts want to wander, not where your emotions want to drift, not where your fears or ambitions want to drag you, but exactly where you stand in this precise moment with absolute attention. The practice begins with understanding. Your mind is like a blade. When focused on a single point, it can cut through anything. When its edge is turned to many directions, it cuts nothing. The warrior's mind must have this singular focus, this unified purpose, this total presence in the moment. Most who seek. The path of the warrior treat presence as an occasional practice, something to be cultivated in moments of importance. They do not understand. Presence is like any other skill. It must be trained constantly, or it will fail you precisely when you need it most. Think of how many moments you waste in mental wandering. In rehearsing past events that cannot be changed. In rehearsing future scenarios that may never occur. In entertaining thoughts that add nothing to your power, nothing to your purpose, nothing to your presence. Each of these mental wanderings is more than a distraction. It is a weakness. Each moment spent outside the present is a moment when your guard is down, when your power is divided, when your effectiveness is compromised. The warrior cannot afford this luxury. The mind must be trained to stay where the feet are. This training is simple but demanding. Whenever you notice your thoughts wandering, bring them back. Not gently, not gradually, but immediately and completely. Like a sword being returned to its sheath, direct, decisive, complete. Start with small moments. When you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you train, train. Not with your body alone, but with your complete attention. No dividing of focus, no splitting of awareness, no scattering of mental energy. Total presence in each action. This is not about suppressing thought. It is about directing it. The mind will think. This is its nature. But the thoughts of a warrior must serve his purpose, not distract from it. They must sharpen his presence, not dull it. They must focus his power, not scatter it. Consider this. In any given moment, there are only two things that deserve your attention. What you are doing and what is happening around you that could affect what you are doing. Everything else is distraction. Everything else is weakness. Everything else is a potential defeat waiting to happen. The warrior who masters presence gains powers that seem magical to the unfocused eye. Perfect timing because they see the moment as it is, not as memory or anticipation paints it. Perfect. Response because they react to what is, not to what they fear or hope might be. Perfect power because their energy is unified, not scattered, but this mastery demands sacrifice. You must be willing to let go of mental habits that most consider normal. The habit of dwelling on the past. The habit of anxiously anticipating the future. The habit of entertaining every thought that crosses your mind. These are luxuries the warrior cannot afford. Your practice must be constant. Whenever you notice your mind has left the present moment, bring it back. Whenever you find your thoughts wandering from your current action, return them. Whenever you feel your attention splitting, unify it. Remember, your mind will try to convince you that its wanderings are important, that you must think about that. Past event must worry about that future possibility. must entertain that random thought. This is the mind's nature, but the warrior is not ruled by nature, he rules it. Begin now, in this moment, with this breath. Be exactly where you are, doing exactly what you are doing with your complete attention, not because it is easy, it is not because it is comfortable, it rarely is, but because it is necessary, because it is the way of the warrior. This is the path to cultivate presence so complete that there is no separation between warrior and moment, between intention and action, between mind and movement. To develop focus so absolute that distractions do not merely fail to intrude, they cease to exist. For in this presence lies the source of all martial power. In this focus lives the seed of all victory. In this unity of mind and moment dwells the essence of the warrior's way. What feels good is the first step toward weakness. In my years of studying both victory and defeat, I have observed a truth that most warriors refuse to acknowledge. Comfort is not your ally. It is your enemy. It is not a reward for strength. It is a path to weakness. What feels good in the moment often leads to failure in the future. Let me speak plainly. Comfort is a poison that kills slowly. It does not strike you down like a sword. It sedates you like a drug. It does not defeat you in battle. It makes you too weak to fight at all. The warrior who embraces comfort has already begun his defeat. I have watched countless strong warriors fall into the trap of comfort. They achieve some success, gain some skill, win some victories, and then they begin to seek ease. They soften their training, relax their standards, reduce their demands on themselves. They do not realize they are exchanging their power for pleasure. Think deeply about this. Every comfort you embrace becomes a chain that binds you. Every ease you accept becomes a weight that slows you. Every luxury you allow becomes a weakness that will be exposed when true challenge arrives. This is why I chose to live simply. Not because I could not afford luxury, not because I did not enjoy comfort, but because I understood the more comfortable you become, the less capable you become. The more ease you accept, the less excellence you achieve. Most who seek the path of the warrior do not understand this principle. They train hard but live soft. They push themselves in practice but coddle themselves in daily life. They do not realize that this contradiction undermines everything they build. Consider your daily choices. When do you choose comfort over growth? When do you choose ease over excellence? When do you choose what feels good over what makes you stronger? These are not small decisions. They are the difference between the warrior and the dreamer. The enemy is not comfort itself. It is the desire for comfort. The threat is not ease itself. It is the love of ease. The danger is not pleasure itself. It is the attachment to pleasure. These desires, these loves, these attachments become the chains that bind your potential. This is why I teach. Make discomfort your ally, not because suffering is good, but because resistance to comfort is strength, not because hardship is desirable, but because the ability to endure hardship is power, not because difficulty is pleasant, but because overcoming difficulty is mastery. The practice begins with small rejections of comfort. Sleep on a harder surface. Take colder showers. Eat simpler foods. Train in adverse conditions, not as punishment, but as preparation, not as suffering, but as strengthening, not as deprivation, but as development. Your body will resist this practice. It will demand its comforts back. It will argue for its ease. It will plead for its pleasures. This resistance is precisely why the practice is necessary. The more your body demands comfort, the more you need to deny it. Remember, every great warrior throughout history achieved greatness through embracing discomfort. They did not have heated dojos, cushioned beds, or climate-controlled training halls. They had determination, discipline, and the understanding that comfort is the enemy of growth. Begin this practice now. Identify the comforts that weaken you, the easy choices that soften you, the luxuries that dull your edge. Then start eliminating them one by one. not all at once. That is not sustainable. But steadily, consistently, intentionally, make your life progressively harder by choice. Add resistance to your daily activities. Create challenges where none exist. Not because harder is always better, but because the ability to handle hardship is always valuable. Your training should never become comfortable. Your practice should never become easy. Your daily life should never become soft. The moment you find yourself settling into comfort is the moment you must increase the demand, raise the standard, amplify the challenge. This is not about living in constant pain or rejecting all pleasure. It is about understanding that comfort is not your friend. It is about recognizing that ease is not your ally. It is about accepting that what feels good is often what makes you weak. The warrior's path is not comfortable. It is effective. It is not easy. It is excellent. It is not pleasant. It is powerful. Choose your path not based on what feels good, but on what makes you stronger. Not based on what is comfortable, but on what is necessary. Remember, comfort is the first step. Toward weakness, ease is the beginning of decline, and pleasure is the prelude to failure. The warrior who understands this truth does not seek comfort, he seeks strength. He does not pursue ease, he pursues excellence. He does not chase pleasure, he chases mastery. This is the way of the warrior, to reject the seduction of comfort, to resist the allure of ease, to rise above the desire for pleasure. Not because these things are evil, but because they are obstacles. Not because they are wrong, but because they are weak. Not because they are forbidden, but because they are fatal to the warrior's spirit. Your path to power lies not in finding more comfort, but in needing less. Not in seeking more ease, but in building more strength. Not in pursuing more pleasure, but in developing more discipline. Let others chase comfort. You chase excellence. Let others seek ease. You seek mastery. Let others pursue pleasure. You pursue power. If you keep deciding, you've already lost. In all my battles, in all my victories, in all my studies of strategy and combat, I have found this truth to be unchanging. Hesitation is defeat. The warrior who must repeatedly decide what he stands. For will fall to the warrior who decided once and finally. Let me share what combat has taught me. There is no time for debate when the sword is falling. There is no space for reconsideration when the enemy is charging. There is no room for uncertainty when action is required. The time for decision is before the moment of crisis, not during it. I have watched warriors fall not because they chose wrongly, but because they chose slowly. Not because they made the wrong decision, but because they were still deciding. They did not understand that in combat and in life, the speed of decision is often more crucial than its content. This is why I teach, decide once, decide completely, decide finally. Not about small tactical choices that require flexibility, but about the fundamental questions that shape your path. Who are you? What do you stand for? What will you never do? What will you always do? These are not questions to be revisited daily. They are foundations to be laid once and built upon forever. Think deeply about the warriors you admire. Their greatness lies not in their constant deliberation, but in their clarity of purpose. They do not wake each morning and decide whether to be excellent. They decided once, and every morning simply follows from that decision. Most who seek the path of the warrior make a crucial mistake. They treat every day as a new decision. They wake up and decide whether to train. They face a challenge and decide whether to persist. They confront temptation and decide whether to resist. This constant deciding exhausts their will and slows their action. Consider this: every moment spent deciding is a moment not spent acting. Every ounce of energy used in deliberation is an ounce not used in execution. Every second of hesitation is a second given to your enemy, your weakness, your defeat. The solution is simple, but demanding. Make the big decisions once with such finality that they are no longer decisions at all. Your commitment to excellence should not be a daily choice. It should be a decided fact. Your dedication to discipline should not be a recurring question. It should be an established reality. This is not about being inflexible. It is about being unshakable. Not about being rigid, but about being resolved. Not about being stubborn, but about being decided. The details of your path may require adjustment, but the fundamental direction should be beyond question. Begin this practice now. Identify the core decisions that define your path as a warrior. Not the small tactical choices, but the big strategic commitments. Then make these decisions with such finality that they become part of your identity. Do not decide each day to train. Decide once to be a warrior, and let training follow naturally. Do not decide each moment to be disciplined. Decide once to be excellent, and let discipline flow automatically. Do not decide each time to persist. Decide once to be unstoppable, and let persistence emerge inevitably. Your decisions must be so complete that they cease to be decisions at all. They must be so final that reopening them for debate becomes as unthinkable as reopening the question of whether to breathe. They must be so absolute that they become not choices, but characteristics. Remember, every time you revisit a fundamental decision, you weaken it. Every time you reopen a core commitment for debate, you dilute it. Every time you treat your basic principles as negotiable, you make them unreliable. The warrior who has truly decided does not face temptation, because the option to yield no longer exists in his mind. He does not battle with motivation, because the choice not to act is no longer available to his spirit. He does not struggle with discipline, because the possibility of surrender is no longer present in his world. This is why I lived as I did. My commitment to the sword was not a daily decision. It was a single choice that shaped decades. My dedication to mastery was not a recurring question. It was a one-time answer that guided thousands of actions. My pursuit of excellence was not a repeated deliberation. It was a singular decision that determined countless moments. Your path as a warrior must be built on these kinds of decisions. Not on daily choices, but on fundamental commitments. Not on recurring deliberations, but on foundational determinations. Not on constant questioning, but on unshakable certainty. This is the way of the warrior, to decide so completely that decision becomes unnecessary. To commit so finally that commitment becomes automatic. To choose so absolutely that choice becomes irrelevant. Make your decisions. Make them now. Make them final. Then stop deciding and start being. Stop choosing and start embodying. Stop deliberating and start acting. For the warrior who is still deciding has already begun to lose, while the warrior who has truly decided has already begun to win. The disciplined warrior feels but does not obey his feelings. In all my studies of combat and human nature, I have observed this truth. Emotions are like weather, powerful but temporary, intense but changing. The warrior who allows himself to be ruled by his emotions is like a ship without a rudder, driven wherever the winds of feeling blow. Let me speak from the wisdom of countless battles. Emotions are not your enemy. Emotional weakness is. Feelings are not your opponent. Being, controlled by feelings, is. The warrior does not seek to eliminate emotion. He seeks to master it. I have watched skilled fighters fall not because they felt fear, but because they obeyed it. Not because they experienced doubt, but because they surrendered to it. Not because they had emotions, but because their emotions had them. This is the difference between the warrior and the victim, not the presence of feelings, but the mastery over them. Think deeply about this. Every emotion you feel is like a counselor offering advice. Fear suggests retreat. Anger suggests attack. Doubt suggests hesitation. But here is the crucial truth. You are not obligated to take this advice. You can feel fear and advance anyway. You can feel anger and remain calm. You can feel doubt and act with certainty. This is why I teach, develop emotional awareness without emotional subservience. Know what you feel, but do not let what you feel. Control what you do. Understand your emotions, but do not be understood by them. Let feelings inform you without commanding you. Most who seek the path of the warrior make one of two mistakes. They either try to eliminate their emotions, or they allow their emotions to eliminate their discipline. Both paths lead to weakness. The warrior's way is to feel fully while remaining free, to experience emotions without being enslaved by them. Consider how many decisions you make based on feelings rather than principles. How many actions you take based on emotional impulse rather than strategic wisdom. How many opportunities you miss because your feelings said no when your training said yes. The solution is not to stop feeling. That is neither possible nor desirable. The solution is to stop obeying feelings as if they were commands, to stop treating emotional impulses as if they were strategic imperatives, to stop allowing temporary feelings to override permanent principles. Your training must include emotional mastery, not the mastery that comes from suppression, but the mastery that comes from transcendence, not by denying feelings but by rising above them. Not by becoming emotionless, but by becoming emotion-free in your decisions. Begin this practice now. When fear arises, feel it fully, then act according to your principles anyway. When anger surfaces, acknowledge it completely, then respond according to your training anyway. When doubt emerges, experience it totally, then proceed according to your strategy anyway. This is not about ignoring emotions, it is about putting them in their proper place. They are advisors, not commanders. They are weather, not climate. They are conditions to be observed, not orders to be obeyed. Remember, the strongest warriors are not those who feel nothing. They are those who feel everything, but remain true to their path regardless. They are not emotionally empty. They are emotionally free. They are not heartless. They are heart masters. In my own practice, I never sought to eliminate fear, anger, doubt, or any other emotion. Instead, I developed the ability to feel these things without being controlled by them, to experience them without being directed by them, to contain them without being constrained by them. Your emotions are like the weather during battle. They may affect conditions, but they should not determine strategy. They may influence the environment, but they should not dictate decisions. They may color experience, but they should not command action. This mastery requires daily practice. Each time an emotion arises, observe it without obeying it. Feel it without following it. Experience it without executing its demands. This is not suppression, it is transcendence. Not denial, but dominion. The warrior who has mastered his emotions has access to their power without being subject to their control. He can use the energy of anger without being used by it. He can employ the caution of fear without being employed by it. He can utilize the pause of doubt without being utilized by it. This is the way of the warrior, to feel without being ruled by feelings, to experience emotions without being enslaved by them, to have passions without being possessed by them. This is true emotional mastery, not the absence of feeling, but the freedom from feeling's dominion. Your path to power lies not in becoming emotionless, but in becoming emotion-free in your choices, not in feeling less, but in being controlled. Less by what you feel, not in eliminating emotions, but in elevating yourself above their governance. Practice this truth. Feel what you feel, but do what you must. Experience what you experience, but act as you should. Let emotions flow through you while you remain unmoved in your purpose, unchanged in your principles, unswayed in your path. For this is the mark of the warrior, not that he feels nothing, but that he is ruled by nothing. Not that he lacks emotions, but that his emotions lack power over his decisions. Not that he is emotionally empty, but that he is emotionally sovereign. When you become the code, you no longer break it. Through all my years of mastery, through every battle and every victory, I have discovered this unchanging truth. Discipline is not something you practice. It is something you become. The warrior, who merely follows a code, will eventually break it. The warrior who becomes the code cannot break it, for doing so would mean breaking himself. Let me share what decades of the sword have taught me. There is a vast difference between following a path and becoming the path. Those who merely follow can be led astray. Those who become cannot be separated from their way, for the way is no longer external to them. It is who they are. I have watched countless warriors fail, not because they lacked knowledge of the right way, but because they maintained a separation between themselves and their code. They treated discipline as a set of rules to be followed rather than an identity to be embodied. This separation became the crack through which weakness entered. Think deeply about this transformation. When you merely follow a code, every action requires a decision. Should I train today? Should I maintain my standards now? Should I uphold my principles in this moment? But when you become the code, these questions vanish. There is no decision because there is no separation between you and the way. This is why I teach. Make discipline your identity, not your activity. Turn your code into your nature, not your choice. Transform your standards from rules you follow into attributes you possess. This is not about what you do, it is about who you are. Most who seek the path of the warrior fail to understand this principle. They approach discipline as a series of actions to be performed, decisions to be made, rules to be followed. They do not grasp that true discipline is not about doing, it is about being, not about following, but about becoming. Consider how often you negotiate with your standards, how frequently you debate with your principles, how regularly you compromise with your code. These negotiations, these debates, these compromises are only possible because you still see your code as something separate from yourself. The solution is not to strengthen your willpower. It is to eliminate the need for willpower entirely, not by weakening your standards, but by fusing with them so completely that following them requires no more decision than breathing, no more effort than existing. Your training must shift from external to internal, from doing to being, from following to becoming. This transformation happens not through force of will, but through depth of integration, not through trying harder, but through embedding deeper. Begin this practice now. Stop thinking of discipline as something you do and start treating it as something you are. Stop viewing your code as a set of rules you follow and start seeing it as a description of who you are. Stop approaching your standards as choices you make and start embracing them as attributes you possess. Remember, the most powerful warriors throughout history were not those who best followed their code. They were those who most completely became their code. They did not need to remember their principles because they had become their principles. They did not have to recall their standards because they had become their standards. This transformation requires a fundamental shift in your relationship with discipline. You must move from compliance to identity, from external regulation to internal nature, from imposed order to inherent character. In my own practice, I never had to decide whether to maintain my standards, because those standards were not separate from me. I never had to choose whether to uphold my principles, because those principles were not external to my nature. I never had to force myself to follow the way, because I had become the way. Your path to mastery lies not in better rule following, but in deeper integration. Not in stronger willpower, but in more complete identification. Not in doing discipline better, but in becoming discipline itself. This is not about perfection. It is about integration. Not about flawless performance, but about fundamental identity. Not about never failing, but about making failure as foreign to your nature as breathing water or walking on air. The warrior who has truly become his code does not resist temptation. He is incapable of recognizing it as a viable option. He does not fight against weakness. He is unable to conceive of yielding to it. He does not struggle with his principles. He is his principles in human form. This is the way of the warrior, to transform from a follower of the code into an embodiment, of it. To evolve from someone who practices discipline into someone who is discipline. To transmute from a person who upholds standards into a living standard himself. Your journey must be one of transformation, not just training, of becoming, not just behaving, of integration, not just implementation. For only when you become the code will you find the unshakable power that lies beyond mere discipline. Practice this truth. Stop trying to follow the way and start becoming the way. Stop attempting to maintain standards and start transforming into the standard. Stop working to uphold principles and start existing as the principle itself. For this is the ultimate expression of the warrior's path. Not to follow it perfectly, but to become it completely. Not to practice it flawlessly, but to embody it totally. Not to maintain it consistently, but to exist as it naturally. A man who is ready to die is impossible to control. In all my studies of warfare, in all my battles, in all my observations of victory and defeat, I have discovered this profound truth. The warrior who has made peace with death has gained a freedom. That makes him invincible, not because he cannot be killed, but because he cannot be controlled by the fear of death. Let me share what the battlefield has taught me. Most men are not defeated by their opponents. They are defeated by their fear of defeat. They are not conquered by death. They are conquered by their terror of dying. They do not lose to the enemy. They lose to their own attachment to life. I have watched warriors with superior skill fall to lesser opponents because they were fighting to survive rather than fighting to win. Their attachment to life became their chain. Their fear of death became their prison. Their desperate desire to survive became the very thing that prevented them from living fully. This is why I practice death meditation daily. Not out of morbidity, but out of pragmatism. Not because I sought death, but because I sought the ultimate freedom that comes from transcending its power over me. Each morning, I would sit and fully accept that this day might be my last. Think deeply about how the fear of death controls your actions, how it limits your choices, how it constrains your power. How many opportunities have you missed because you were too afraid to risk? How many victories have you forfeited because you were too attached to safety? Most who seek the path of the warrior misunderstand this teaching. They think it means to be reckless, to court death, to ignore danger. This is not the way. The practice is not about seeking death. It is about accepting it so completely that its power to influence your decisions vanishes. Consider this. When you fully accept death, what remains to fear? When you have already embraced the possibility of dying, what threat can your opponent hold over you? When you have made peace with your mortality, what power can any challenge have to deter you? This is why I teach. Practice death to master life. Not because death is the goal, but because the acceptance of death is the ultimate liberation. Not because dying is desirable, but because being free from the fear of dying is essential. The practice begins with honest contemplation. Each morning acknowledge that this day might be your last. Not as a fearful thought, but as a simple fact. Not as a worry, but as a reality. Accept it fully. Make peace with it completely. Your training must include this dimension of death acceptance, not as a morbid obsession, but as a practical tool. Not as a dark contemplation, but as a path to light. Not as an end in itself, but as a means to ultimate freedom. Remember, the warrior who fears death can be controlled through that fear. The warrior who clings to life can be manipulated through that attachment. But the warrior who has fully accepted death becomes immune to both fear and manipulation. In my own practice, I would visualize my death in detail, not to become comfortable with dying, but to become free from the fear of it. I would imagine every possible way my life might end, not to court these endings, but to transcend my fear of them. This is not about becoming careless with life. It is about becoming fearless in living. Not about disregarding safety, but about transcending the paralysis that comes from excessive concern for it. Not about courting death, but about refusing to let the fear of death court you. Begin this practice now. Each morning, acknowledge your mortality. Each day, accept that it might be your last. Each moment, embrace the reality that death is not a possibility to be feared, but a certainty to be accepted. Not to become morbid, but to become free. Your relationship with death must transform from fear to acceptance, from resistance to embrace, from denial to acknowledgement. This transformation will not make you immortal, it will make you invincible, not to death itself, but to the fear of it. The warrior who has mastered this truth fights differently, moves differently, lives differently, not because he seeks death, but because he has transcended the fear of it. Not because he wants to die, but because he has learned how to truly live. This is the way of the warrior, to accept death so completely that life becomes fully accessible, to embrace mortality so deeply that immortality becomes irrelevant, to make peace with dying so profoundly that living becomes limitless. Your path to power lies not in avoiding death, but in transcending its power over you, not in prolonging life at any cost, but in living fully regardless of the cost, not in fearing what might end you, but in expressing what makes you unstoppable. Practice this truth. Death is not your enemy. Fear of death is. Mortality is not your opponent. Attachment to immortality is. The end of life is not your adversary. The refusal to accept it is, for this is the ultimate freedom of the warrior, not that he cannot die, but that he cannot be controlled by the fear of dying. Not that he is immortal, but that he is invincible to the paralysis of mortality. Not that he will live forever, but that he will live fully until the very end. When you truly understand this, when you fully embrace this, when you completely embody this truth, you will discover what I discovered. A warrior who is ready to die becomes impossible to defeat, not because he cannot be killed, but because he cannot be controlled. Not because he is beyond death, but because he is beyond fear. Discipline acts now. Delay is just refined weakness. Through all my studies of combat and mastery, I have discovered this unchanging truth. There is no tomorrow in the warrior's way. There is no later in the path of discipline. There is only now, this moment, this breath, this opportunity. Delay is not a strategy. It is surrender in disguise. Let me share what countless battles have taught me. The moment you decide to wait is the moment you decide to fail. Not because waiting is always wrong, but because waiting has become the refuge of the weak, the excuse of the undisciplined, the shelter of those who fear to act. I have watched skilled warriors fall not because they chose wrongly, but because they chose too late. Not because they made the wrong decision, but because they delayed making any decision. They did not understand that in both combat and life, timing is not just important, it is everything. Think deeply about your relationship with time. How often do you say tomorrow to what must be done today? How frequently do you postpone what your discipline demands? How regularly do you delay what your growth requires? Each postponement is not a plan, it is a defeat. This is why I teach, act now. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect, now. The warrior's time is always now. The moment of power is always present. The opportunity for action is always immediate. Most who seek the path of the warrior fail to understand this principle. They treat delay as if it were strategy, postponement as if it were preparation, procrastination as if it were wisdom. They do not grasp that each moment of delay is a moment of death to their discipline. Consider this: every time you delay what must be done, you strengthen the habit of delay. Every time you postpone what needs to be accomplished, you reinforce the pattern of postponement. Every time you put off what your growth demands, you exercise the muscle of procrastination. The solution is not complex. but it is demanding. Eliminate delay from your arsenal of options. Remove postponement from your vocabulary of choices. Strike procrastination from your list of possibilities. Not because immediate action is always best, but because delay has become a poison to the warrior's spirit. Your discipline must become immediate, not in all things, but in all things that matter. Not in trivial choices, but in essential actions. Not in minor decisions, but in major commitments. When discipline calls, the only acceptable answer is now. Begin this practice now. Identify what you have been postponing, what essential action you have been delaying, what necessary growth you have been deferring. Then act on it immediately. Not tomorrow, not later. Not when you feel more ready, but now. Remember, the strongest warriors throughout history were not those who waited for perfect conditions. They were those who acted in the conditions they had. They were not those who delayed until they felt ready. They were those who acted to become ready. This is not about rushing. It is about refusing to delay. Not about acting without thought, but about refusing to use thought as an excuse not to act. Not about being reckless, but about refusing to use caution as a mask for fear. In my own practice, I never waited for the perfect moment to train, to learn, to grow, to act. I understood that the perfect moment was a myth, an illusion, a lie that weakness tells itself to justify inaction. The moment to act was always now. The time to move was always present. The opportunity to grow was always immediate. Your relationship with time must transform from seeing it as something to spend to seeing it as something to invest, from treating it as abundant to treating it as precious, from viewing it as flexible to viewing it as absolute. Time does not wait for the warrior acts in the time he has. The warrior who has mastered this truth does not debate with himself about when to act, he acts. He does not negotiate with himself about when to move, he moves. He does not bargain with himself about when to grow, he grows. The time is always now. The moment is always present. The opportunity is always immediate. This is the way of the warrior, to eliminate delay as an option, to remove postponement as a possibility, to strike procrastination from the vocabulary of choice, not because immediate action is always wise, but because delay has become the craftiest enemy of excellence. Your path to power lies not in finding the perfect moment, but in making this moment perfect through action. Not in waiting for better circumstances, but in creating better circumstances through immediate movement. Not in hoping for future opportunity, but in seizing present possibility. Practice this truth. Delay is not your ally, it is your adversary. Postponement is not your friend, it is your enemy. Procrastination is not your servant, it is your master, unless you master it through immediate action. For this is the mark of the warrior. Not that he always acts immediately, but that he never delays what discipline demands. Not that he moves without thought, but that he refuses to use thought as an excuse not to move. Not that he acts without preparation, but that he refuses to let preparation become procrastination. When discipline calls, answer now. When growth beckons, move now. When excellence demands, act now. For in the warrior's way, there is no tomorrow. There is only now, this moment, this breath, this opportunity to become what you are meant to be. The undisciplined lose their days to men who value minutes. In all my studies of strategy and victory, I have observed this unchanging truth. Time is not merely a resource, it is the resource. The warrior who masters his time masters his life. The warrior who wastes his time wastes his power. The warrior who surrenders his time surrenders his destiny. Let me share what decades of mastery have taught me. Most battles are lost long before they begin in the countless small surrenders of time that precede them, in the minutes given to distraction, in the hours sacrificed to meaningless activity, in the days lost to lack of purpose. I have watched skilled warriors fall not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked time mastery. They treated time as if it were infinite, as if there would always be more, as if today's waste could be compensated for by tomorrow's effort. This is the thinking of the defeated. Think deeply about how you treat your time. Do you protect it like a sword that can win battles, or do you spend it like coins that can always be replaced? Do you invest it in growth, or do you waste it on distraction? Do you control it with purpose, or do you surrender it to whatever demands your attention? This is why I teach, protect your time like a weapon. Guard it like a blade that can cut through any obstacle. Shield it like armor that can defend against any attack. Value it like a strategy that can win any battle. For that is exactly what time is, when properly used. Most who seek the path of the warrior fail to understand this principle. They think time management is beneath them, that scheduling is for merchants, that protecting their hours is unnecessary. They do not grasp that time is the foundation of all mastery, the basis of all skill, the source of all power. Consider how many warriors train their bodies but neglect their time. They build physical strength while maintaining weak boundaries around their hours. They develop tactical skill while surrendering strategic control of their days. They seek power while giving away the very resource that could build it. Your time must be protected with the same ferocity you would protect your life, not because every minute must be productive, but because every minute must be intentional. Not because every hour must be intense, but because every hour must be yours to command. Begin this practice now. Audit your time like a general auditing his resources. Where does it go? Who controls it? What battles could be won with the time you currently waste? What victories could be achieved with the hours you currently surrender? The practice is simple but demanding. Build boundaries around your time that are as strong as castle walls. Create schedules that are as precise as military operations. Defend your hours with the same determination you would defend your life. Remember, the most powerful warriors throughout history were not those who had more time. They were those who used their time more powerfully. They were not those who waited for time. They were those who commanded it. This mastery requires systematic approach. Block your time like a strategist planning a campaign. Protect your focused hours like a swordsman guards his blade. Eliminate time wasters like a general cutting enemy supply lines. In my own practice, I treated time as my most precious resource. Every morning was claimed for training. Every afternoon was reserved for study. Every evening was dedicated to reflection. Not because this schedule was perfect, but because having no schedule was perfectly fatal to mastery. Your relationship with time must transform from casual to commanding, from reactive to proactive, from surrendered to controlled. Time is not river that carries you. It is a weapon you wield, a resource you command, a force you direct. The warrior who has mastered time operates differently from others. He does not find time. He takes it. He does not hope for time. He commands it. He does not wait for time. He creates it through elimination of the unnecessary, through protection of the essential, through mastery of the important. This is not about becoming rigid. It is about becoming intentional, not about becoming inflexible, but about becoming unconquerable in your use of time, not about controlling every minute, but about ensuring that no essential minute is controlled by others. Your power as a warrior is directly proportional to your mastery of time, not just in how you use individual moments, but in how you string those moments together into hours, those hours into days, those days into a life of purpose and power. Practice these disciplines. Guard your morning hours like a fortress. Protect your focus time like a treasure. Defend your growth time like territory. These are not metaphors. They are military necessities in the battle for mastery. Create systems that make time protection automatic. Establish boundaries that make time mastery inevitable. Build habits that make time command natural. Not because systems are the goal, but because without them, Time slips away like water through uncupped hands. This is the way of the warrior, to treat time not as an endless resource to be spent, but as a finite weapon to be wielded. Not as a river to float upon, but as a force to be directed. Not as a gift to be accepted, but as a territory to be conquered. Your path to power lies not in finding more time, but in mastering the time you have. Not in hoping for more hours, but in commanding the hours you possess. Not in wishing for different circumstances, but in taking command of your current moments. For this is the ultimate truth of time mastery. The warrior who commands his minutes will defeat the warrior who wastes his hours. The warrior who protects his days will overcome the warrior who surrenders his weeks. The warrior who masters his time masters his destiny. Your edge is dulled every time you excuse yourself. Through all my battles, through all my studies, through all my mastery, I have discovered this unchanging truth. Excellence has no exceptions. The standard you maintain is not the standard you occasionally reach. It is the standard you never fall below. Every excuse you accept becomes a weakness you embrace. Let me share what the pursuit of mastery has taught me. There is no such thing as a small compromise. Each exception you allow, each standard you lower, each excuse you accept, creates a crack in your discipline that will widen under pressure until it becomes the reason for your defeat. I have watched countless warriors fall not because they faced challenges too great, but because they allowed their standards to become too small. Not because they encountered obstacles too high, but because they permitted their excellence to sink too low. They did not understand that the standard you keep is the warrior you become. Think deeply about your relationship with excellence. How often do you excuse yourself from your own standards? How frequently do you allow exceptions to your own rules? How regularly do you permit yourself to fall below your own expectations? Each of these moments is not mercy, it is weakness. This is why I teach. Maintain your standard absolutely. Not because perfection is possible, but because the pursuit of it is essential. Not because you will never fail, but because you must never accept failure as acceptable. Not because you can always reach your standard, but because you must never lower it. Most who seek the path of the warrior misunderstand this principle. They think standards are guidelines to be approached, goals to be attempted, ideals to be admired. They do not grasp that standards are not aspirations. They are definitions. They do not define what you hope to do. They define who you are. Consider how many times you have excused yourself from excellence. How many times you have pardoned your own mediocrity. How many times you have forgiven your own surrender to comfort, convenience, or circumstance. Each of these pardons is not kindness to yourself. It is betrayal of yourself. Your standard must become your identity. Not something you do, but something you are. Not something you achieve, but something you embody. Not something you reach for, but something you refuse to fall below. The practice begins with honesty. Examine every excuse you have accepted, every compromise you have permitted, every standard you have lowered. Not to condemn yourself, but to understand that each of these was a choice you need not make again. Remember, the strongest warriors throughout history were not those who never failed. They were those who never accepted failure as acceptable. They were not those who never fell short. They were those who never lowered their standards to match their shortcomings. This is not about being perfect. It is about being relentless in the pursuit of excellence. Not about never failing, but about never accepting failure as normal. Not about never falling short, but about never shortening the measure to match the fall. In my own practice, I never excused imperfection in my technique, never justified weakness. In my discipline, never rationalized gaps in my practice, not because I never fell short, but because I refused to make peace with falling short. Not because I never failed, but because I refused to accept failure as acceptable. Your relationship with excellence must transform, from seeing it as a destination to seeing it as a standard, from treating it as a goal to treating it as a minimum, from viewing it as an achievement to viewing it as an identity. The warrior who has mastered this truth does not negotiate with weakness, does not bargain with mediocrity, does not compromise with comfort, not because he never feels weak, mediocre, or uncomfortable, but because he refuses to allow these feelings to determine his actions. This is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about being honest with yourself, not about punishing yourself for failures, but about refusing to excuse them, not about achieving perfection, but about maintaining the standard that drives toward it. Your power as a warrior grows not from the heights you occasionally reach, but from the baseline you refuse to fall below, not from your best moments, but from your minimum standard, not from what you can do when everything is perfect, but from what you refuse to do even when everything is hard. Practice this truth. Every standard you maintain strengthens you. Every standard you lower weakens you. Every excuse you accept becomes a part of who you are. Every compromise you allow becomes a characteristic you develop. This is the way of the warrior, to maintain standards that others think impossible, to hold lines that others think unnecessary, to pursue excellence that others think unreasonable. Not because these things are easy, but because they are essential. Your path to power lies not in reaching high standards occasionally, but in refusing to fall below them ever. Not in achieving excellence sometimes, but in refusing to accept anything, less any time. Not in being perfect, but in never making peace with imperfection. For this is the ultimate truth of excellence. The warrior is not defined by his highest achievements, but by his lowest acceptable standard, not by what he can do at his best, but by what he refuses to do at his worst, not by his greatest victories, but by his unshakable minimums. When discipline becomes instinct, you no longer carry the sword. You are the sword. In all my years of mastery, in all my battles, in all my studies, I have discovered this final truth. The ultimate goal of discipline is not to create perfect action, but to transform the warrior himself. When discipline becomes complete, you do not practice it, you embody it. You do not carry power, you become power. Let me share what lifetime of the sword has taught me. There is a state beyond discipline, beyond effort, beyond conscious control. A state where right action flows not from decision, but from nature. Where power emerges not from choice, but from essence. Where excellence is not what you do, it is what you are. I have watched warriors struggle with discipline their entire lives, forever pushing, forever striving, forever forcing themselves to maintain their standards. They never understood that true mastery lies not in perpetual effort, but in transformation so complete that effort becomes unnecessary. Think deeply about your relationship with discipline. Do you wear it like armor that must be constantly maintained? Do you carry it like a weapon that must be consciously wielded? Or has it begun to merge with your very being, becoming as natural as breathing, as automatic as your heartbeat? This is why I teach. The goal is not to perfect your discipline. It is to let discipline perfect you, not to master techniques, but to let the techniques master you, not to possess power, but to become power itself. This is the final transformation of the warrior's path. Most who seek the way of the warrior never reach this state. They remain forever in the realm of conscious effort, of deliberate action, of intentional control. They do not understand that these are merely stages on the path, not the path's destination. Consider how many aspects of your life were once disciplines that required effort, but have now become natural. Walking, speaking, writing. These required intense focus and practice when you first learned them. Now they flow without thought. This is the model for all discipline, not eternal effort, but complete transformation. The final stage of mastery is when discipline dissolves into nature, when right action requires no decision, when excellence needs no reminder, when power flows not from what you do, but from what you have become. Your training must aim not just at perfecting action, but at transforming essence, not just at building skill, but at rebuilding self, not just at developing power, but at becoming power. This is not mysticism. It is the natural culmination of true discipline. Begin this practice now. Notice the disciplines that have already become natural to you, the standards that require no effort to maintain, the excellence that flows without conscious thought. These are not exceptions. They are examples of what all discipline can become. Remember, the greatest warriors throughout history were not those who maintained the strongest discipline. They were those who had transcended the need for discipline by becoming its living embodiment. They were not disciplined, they were discipline itself. This transformation happens not through more effort, but through deeper integration, not through stronger will, but through more complete absorption, not through better control, but through more fundamental change. In my own practice, I reached a point where using the sword required no more conscious thought than moving my arm, where maintaining excellence required no more deliberate effort. Then breathing, where power flowed not from what I did, but from what I had become. Your path must lead to this transformation, from doing to being, from practicing to embodying, from carrying power to becoming power. This is not the end of discipline. It is its ultimate fulfillment. The warrior who has reached this state moves differently, acts differently, exists differently, not because he is constantly maintaining his discipline, but because he has become the living expression of that discipline, not because he is trying to be excellent, but because excellence is his nature. This is not about achieving perfection. It is about transformation so complete that the very question of perfection becomes irrelevant, not because you never fail, but because your nature itself has become the standard you once struggled to maintain. Your power as a warrior must evolve from something you use to something you are, from a quality you maintain to a nature you express, from a discipline you practice to an essence you embody. Practice this truth. Every discipline you maintain is not just shaping your actions, it is reshaping your essence. Every standard you uphold is not just controlling your behavior, it is transforming your nature. Every excellence you pursue is not just improving your performance, it is rebuilding yourself. This is the final way of the warrior, to transcend the need for conscious discipline by becoming its living embodiment, to move beyond the realm of eternal effort into the domain of natural expression, to evolve from one who practices power into one who is power. Your ultimate path leads not to perfect discipline, but beyond discipline itself, not to complete control, but beyond the need for control, not to absolute power, but to becoming power itself. For this is the warrior's final transformation. When discipline becomes instinct, you no longer follow the way, you are the way. When excellence becomes nature, you no longer pursue power, you are power. When mastery becomes essence, you no longer carry the sword, you are the sword.